Halo teman-teman, selamat malam. Selamat datang pada sesi pada malam hari ini. Welcome to our session tonight, which is about financial business analytics. Pertama-tama, kami ingin mengucapkan sangat terima kasih untuk partisipasinya pada malam hari ini. Sebelum kita mulai, saya ingin memberikan sedikit rules of the game sebelum kita mulai. Jadi teman-teman, silahkan nanti kalau ingin bertanya sepanjang sesi untuk menuliskan pertanyaan-pertanyaannya yang berkaitan dengan materi pada fitur Q&A. Nah, fiturnya itu ada di bawah panel, teman-teman. Jadi bisa diklik fitur Q&A untuk bertanya. Nah, kenapa tanyanya di Q&A bukan di chat? Supaya nanti kami sebagai panelis bisa melihat dan track pertanyaan apa saja yang belum kami jawab dan bisa kami follow up. Nah, kemudian apabila nanti ada pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang belum terjawab, kita akan kumpulkan dari Q&A dan kita akan balas kembali ke teman-teman melalui email. Lalu, jangan takut materi pada malam hari ini dan juga recordingnya, itu tetap akan kita berikan melalui email setelah sesi ini selesai ya teman-teman ya. Nah, oke, sekarang without further ado, silahkan. Oh, okay, sorry, we have someone. We will facilitate this session in full English. Don't worry. So I will also ask my friends later to give the session full in English. So don't worry. So tonight I will be. My name is Tasha. We will be joining the session with Sean and Sarah. We will later introduce ourselves. Don't worry. For those of you who have just joined, thank you for joining tonight. We will do the session after this rules of the game, which I'm going to explain a bit. For those of you who wants to ask us questions, please do so on the Q&A feature on the downside of your panel. Why the Q&A? Because we want to be able to track all of your question and answers so that we can follow up on those who we haven't answered. For those of you whose questions haven't been answered yet, don't worry. We will consolidate all questions and we will answer you guys through your emails. And also the materials and the recording in the session, we will give all of it to you after the session ends. So don't worry. Thank you. So without further ado, let's start the session. So hello, Sarah and Sean.
Hi, Tasha. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Tasha. Hi, Sarah. Good evening, everyone, as well.
Okay, so thank you for joining us tonight, guys. Before we start, we would like to tell you a short story about House of Analytics. So House of Analytics is an analytics innovation lab which focuses on extracting unique insight from business data. We help businesses, we help other people, we help organizations to take different approach to exploit their full potential, be it giving them more options to get revenue or more engagement from the customer, and to improve their company. Okay, so apart from this class, we also have several portfolios or several experiences in different fields. So we have worked with several banks, the banks in Indonesia, and banks, we have several large banks in Indonesia, but we also have DBS, World Scale Bank, and we also have do our part in the F&B business, in retail, in cafe, and also in collaborating with Rachel House to improve the health sector and to improve the platform of social service in Indonesia. Apart from this class, we also have different sessions. There's Decision Science 101 course series number 3, because we have done the number 1 and 2. The topic is Value of Business Analytics in Financial Decision Making. So the class would be held on Thursday, 4th of June, 2020, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. This is limited to 30 people per session. So if you are interested, you can contact us. We will show you our contact details at the end of the session, and you can also DM or mention us in the Instagram House of Analytics. If you join this session, you will get a certificate, which is subject to exercise result, and then knowledge about and presentation material about the value of business analytics in financial decision making, and not to mention also simulation exercise about the real case exercise data in Excel. So if you join our next session in Thursday, 4th of June, 2020, not only you will get more knowledge, more in-depth knowledge about the business analytics in financial decision making, but you will also get to experience the exercise and use the real case study to broaden your perspective. So tonight, there are 3 speakers here, including myself. So we have Sean here. So Sean actually graduated from University of the Arts London in terms of innovation management, yeah. And then he also have background in economics for his bachelor. And we also have Tasha here. So Tasha actually graduated from psychology back in bachelor, but she already experienced a lot of projects in terms of human capital analytics and business analytics. So she provided the team with different perspective from the people side, while Sean is more from the business and technical side. I myself, Sarah here, graduated from Bachelor of Dentistry, but then I decided to jump into the analytics, and I have experienced some projects about the human capital, financial, business engineering. So 3 of us support the team together to help the company exploit their full potential. Okay, so by joining the session today, we have some aligning expectations. So the first one, when you join to this class today, the class will talk about the use of financial analysis to solve non-financial issues, understanding the basics of finance and accounting, types of decision-making in financial analytics, and not to mention also the case study in financial analytics that we will provide and discuss together. However, this class will not cover about the financial modeling using statistic tools such as Python, R, RapidMiner, and we would also not cover the technical financial analytics, and we would not cover the financial analysis in investment. So today is more about the how to make decision in financial analytics or using financial data, and discussing about the case study that is common to happen involving the financial analytics. Okay, so first, when you join this class, maybe some of you have questions about what is the difference between finance and accounting. Tasha, maybe we want to go back one slide. Okay, so there is actually a difference between finance and accounting. It is their scope of work. If you take a look at the purple box that says accounting, and you see the box next to it, the blue one that says finance, maybe it looks similar, but however, accounting is actually focusing on the process of recording the financial transaction. So accounting is basically trying to tell you how the cash come in, how the cash come out. It's like recording your expenses, recording your expenditure. Like for example, for this quarantine period, accounting is recording how much money you have spent to online shop and how much money you get from your salary or how much money you get from doing a F&B business, selling cookies to your friends. That is accounting. However, finance is a little bit different. Finance is actually recording the growth or the difference between the one year to the next year. So it's basically recording the movement or the process of managing money from one period of time to the other period of time. Here the example is 2018 and 2019. We see that the first row, the 54 million, and in 2019 it becomes 60 million. So finance is the process of managing the money. What are the things that you do until you get higher in revenue? What are the things that you do so you spend more costs and your profit decrease and so on and so forth? There's a little difference in both of them, accounting and finance, but both of them are important in making decisions. If we take a look at the decision making that we can make using the financial data, in general, there are two types of decision making. The first one is the finance in business, and the second one is finance in investment. Okay, so to explain more, let's just deep dive on the example. The first one is finance in investment. A lot of you may already heard about investing, about the importance of buying stocks or putting in mutual funds and so on and so forth. But maybe you haven't really understand what investment means. So using financial data or operational data or any data that we think that we see fit to make a decision in investment is basically trying to find or trying to value whether a business is worth investing or not. The first thing that we want to know is to understand whether if we invest on this company, how much money we will get in return. Because in investing, it's not only that we want to cover the cost that we put in investment, but also that we want to get more of the investment money we put. We also want to know the risk of investing or even buying the businesses. Because when you invest, of course, there will be some risk. Like, for example, like Corona right now, there are a lot of businesses that is being put out, being shut down. There are a lot of companies that cannot work properly or cannot work with to its fullest extent because of the situation, and that is the risk an investor should bear. Of course, their return this year would be lower than previous year. So if we take a look at the example, the company A, B, and C. At the first glance, if we only look at the investment cost, the 50 million USD, 20 million USD, and 80 million USD. If we stop in the investment cost, we will think that, oh, let's just put the money in 80 billion company, the number C. Why? Because if we put more money, of course, the return will be bigger compared to if we put a smaller amount of money in company A or B. But if we do further analysis in terms of dividends to the shareholders, or in terms of the money, the return of the money we will get after 1 year, we can see that actually, even though the company number C give more money in terms of amount, so they give 5 million USD, but if we take a look at the percentage, the return on investment, company B is actually more profitable. So using this data, we can make decision that, okay, if we want to get more money, if we want to get more return, it's better for us to invest small amount of money to companies like company B. So maybe we can invest 20 million in company B, and then 20 million in company B.1, B.2, and so on and so forth until we achieve the 80 million, rather than we put all of our money in one basket in company C, because the return in percentage is just not as big as the other companies, especially the company B. How about the finance in business? If the finance and investment is actually trying to give you an example or give you a better picture on what businesses or what investing activities that can give you more return, the finance and business is actually to analyze and to diagnose the common problems in business, which is the unusual cost expenditure and bottlenecks. Finance and business is actually used to know where the problem is and to know how it is costing the company. Of course, as a company, you need to make sure that every year you will get better profit. You will have increase in profit. But apart from increasing profit, you may also need to press your cost down, or at least maintain your cost so it doesn't go really high compared to the previous year. Using finance in business can help you to understand what kind of things that you need to cut down in order to maintain the cost, or what kind of things that you need to improve, what kind of things you need to maximize in order to get more money in terms of selling. Also, we can using finance in business can also help you figuring out what kind of departments or what kind of sectors that doesn't really need your time anymore, and we don't need to continue this working on this department because it will cost you more rather than giving you more revenue. Finances business is usually used in the budgeting and planning of the company and the cost saving management in a company. Apart from company, actually, you can also apply this principle if you want to do financial analysis on yourself. So for example, if you want to take a look at your monthly spending and what kind of new gadget you can buy in the next month, what kind of shopping you can do, or what kind of new business you can do in the next year, you can use the finance in business to help yourself improve in financial analytics.
Now let's take an example of our case studies, real case studies where we can see the application of financial analytics to help businesses. So one of the case studies that we have encountered in the past was the objective was to help a company simplify the KPI. So what is a KPI? KPI is a key performance indicators, where these are a list of outputs that an employee must do in order to achieve their target or their performance. And the background of this case study happened in a financial industry where the company, the business was that they sell loans to people, and they were asking us, they were telling us that, you know what, we feel that the cash in and cash out of our day-to-day process is actually pretty hard. It means that the cash in is very good, but then when they use that money, the operational cost was really, really high. So then we asked them, okay, maybe we can walk through you. We've seen your financial reviews and we've seen the year on year financial expense and also revenue that you have in the past 5 years. Now, what we want to understand is that, is there, what happens to the process? What happens to what the people do in their day-to-day basis? And so we asked them, okay, can you give us their workflow, and can you also give us their performance scorecard? So we asked the performance scorecard to see what kind of performance that they have and their day-to-day targets. So for example, here they have total calls and talk hour, because one of the ways that they sell this loan is through telesales, so through calls, right? And we tell them that, okay, we have this proposition that perhaps we can see the relationship between the balance saved in your process throughout the performance indicators. And so what we did was simple, actually. We take a look at the performance indicators. We did a correlation with the balance saved. For each month, we calculated the balance saved, and then we correlate that with their 1 year performance. And we see that actually there are some of these performance that have some correlation, or have, we can say, have some relationship with balance that can be saved. For example, this one is total cost. So we tell them that actually if you want to go, and the next steps that you should do is that take a look at these types of performance that have the correlation with the balance saved. From out of 20 performance, we found that actually around 5 to 7 of the performance, they have correlation with the balance saved. And so we tell them actually by consolidating this 7 performance, you see, if we focus on these 7 performance, and you see that every year or every month we track the kind of costs that we have, then we can be able to save money. And so out of those 7, actually we found out that we can save more than 20% of what they used to have in the previous year. Let's take a look at another type of case studies, which will be presented by Sean.
Okay, so in our second case study is basically in the manufacturing context. So as you know, in manufacturing, one of the main objectives in the business is basically being able to match the supply and demand. Now, what do I mean by that? Whenever you want to sell a product, right, any kind of product, be it iPhones, cars, anything, you basically have to ensure that you have enough of those supply, right? And at the same time, whenever you feel or whenever you analyze that that the market, let's say, at for example, at during Corona times, the market is going down. You also want to ensure that you're not oversupplying, right? And the objective there is to ensure that you're not oversupplying, and then you're also not undersupplying. Where in finance, especially, cash flow is a very important thing. And in our example here, one of the financial analysis and projects that we did was to optimize the inventory utilization in order to optimize the cash flow. And the issue here was that when this particular company was operating, the manufacturing was basically assuming that every one of their product was selling at the same rate. Now, when you're a company, you might have, multiple products, right? You might have 2 or 3 different kinds of products that caters to different customers. But those products and those customers may not actually buy or even purchase the same pace for every product, right? So let's say in cars, right? I think for consumer cars like Toyota, let's see. I know in Malaysia and Indonesia we have different Toyotas, but let's say we have Protons, right? Protons mostly sell consumer cars, right? And then Toyota, maybe you also have Toyota GT86 or something like that. So consumer cars, they tend to sell out very fast. Relatively, if we compare to trucks, if we compare to heavy equipments, they tend to be very, very slow, or even we call them non-moving goods, because of their very nature, that usually only businesses or even other manufacturing or industries purchase them for their own businesses, right? And from here, we were trying to solve this issue where, because the company was treating everything at the same pace, right, selling at the same pace, some of the products were then oversupplying, and as a consequence of that, they were basically producing something that people would not actually buy. And it was an issue because they had to use up a lot of their inventory space, which meant that they couldn't produce the other goods. And the issue was that because of this, then, the other products had to be sacrificed. And one of the solutions that we looked at was, what if then we're able to classify each product um, in their speed of movement, meaning that, how fast are they being sold to the market. And when we looked at this, we found that uh, some of the products, they had very, very different inventory turnover ratio. So those of you who are not familiar in finance, inventory turnover ratio basically means how fast is a good moving or being sold in a period of time. And basically, the formula is basically COGS, or cost of goods sold. Basically, it's the amount of money that costs the company to create this product, and the average inventory, which is how much inventory is there in the for this particular product. And when we looked into the inventory turnover ratio, we found that different products had very, very different pace. And we use this data to prove the fact that not every product is selling the same, right? And knowing which product are fast moving, slow moving, and non-moving, we're then able to make a decision on which products that you really need to regularly produce, and which products are to be produced confirmed by order only, meaning that um, you should tell customer that if you want this particular product, you have to order it, and so that we're able to produce it. And which product are basically non-moving, which basically, if someone really, really wants it, they then have to really tell us, or we're basically going to stop producing it because no one really wants it. And from this particular company, with this particular analysis as well, we're then able to create different forecasts for the different products. And this is quite important as well, because knowing which goods is fast and as well as slow, we're then able to better plan our supply as well as our purchase of raw materials. So if we go into the next slide. So the inventory classification basically helped us understand which products that I need to keep up, keep producing and keep buying the raw materials, and which products that I can, um, not really buy, that often, as well as which products that I only need to confirm with the customers, um, and then I produce. And from this, you can then optimize the inventory, especially the space of the inventory and how it's being stored as well. This was especially very useful for this project, because the client was also trying to solve how the each products were being stored, and basically we found out that the ones that are regularly produced, you need to have it in front, right, so that it can be optimized in terms of the storage. And they were then able to connect the supply forecast as well with the demand forecast, meaning that the company was able to plan out how much raw materials was needed to be bought in order to produce what the market basically is demanding. Um, and this was particularly important for the manufacturing, because inventory classification, um, for inventory turnover as well, it's we don't really think about classifying it using the turnover ratio, but knowing how you can segment products with the financial analysis as well can help you make decisions on how to better optimize your cash flow as well, where you know that the demand or the money is coming in straight away, and you can then use it as well to purchase the raw material. So the cash flow is basically aligned with each other. So in all of these case study, we basically want to kind of give the point or conclusion to all of this. So basically in financial analytics, I see one of you has asked a question on what is the difference between um, actuarial science and financial analytics. Um, Basically, in here, in actuarial science, in finance, it's mostly about predicting and being able to create insurance products that are basically sustainable in terms of the pricing as well as for the claims being made. But in here, what we want to talk about is how can we use financial analysis as well as the same kind of data in order to make uh, decisions that are also non-financial, meaning that it's not only just being able to see or project the outcome of financial outcome, but it's also being able to identify problems and to solve operational issues and business issues um, that are ongoing in a company. And in this particular case study, right, for the manufacturing as well as in banking, we basically change the context. In finance, it's always about being able to predict or forecast, what's going to happen. And so if it's going to go down, the economy, or it's going to go up, then we basically adjust the budgeting. Or even we then have to be more careful with our spending, for example. But in this case, what we wanted to give you guys is how can we then use this financial data to to actually make decisions that are not only just financial, but also for operational benefit. And from this, what happened in both of those projects was that the financial part or the financial departments of those projects in our clients, they were then able to give recommendation to the operations team as well as the sales or business team. And in here, the key feature is basically trying to identify the problem and being able to make a recommendation out of it, rather than just being able to forecast or even create budgeting plan, but also being able to help the other departments. So in the manufacturing example, that was being able to find out what was actually causing this gap in supply and demand, right? Why are we oversupplying in some products? Why are we having shortages in other products? At the same time, why are we when the market wanted product A, but why do we have more product B, for example, and then vice versa? And that happened in in our client, in this particular case, where they kept getting the forecasting wrong. And so when the market wanted product A, they supplied product B. When the market wanted product B, they supplied product A. And so it was like, they really made the wrong decision. But actually it wasn't necessarily a wrong decision, but it was just a matter of being able to use the financial data, such as the inventory turnover, to actually create a better recommendation and decision making for the operations. So it's not just about being able to forecast or find out where are we going to be in 5 years in terms of our financials, but it's also to solve the issue or decision making issue within the operations and sales even. And from that, you can then be able to use financial analysis, not just for for financial reasons, but as well for business reasons.
Okay, thank you. Angel, can you help us with the Q&A?
Okay, hello. Hello. Okay, I'll help you to get some of question from our participants. Maybe the first question is for Tasha. Some of our participants still not clear about the balance safe that you presented on.
Yes, I just answered actually. They have two questions on the balance safe.
Yeah.
So here, if you see the answer, the definition of the balance safe is the money that they save in the bank account. Remember that this case is about a company, they financial industry, a bank. They offer loans, and they see that actually the financials are quite not healthy at that time. So they were asking us, can we review their financials and also the process? When we saw actually they can optimize the cost by taking a look at the communication channels. So we see that some of the people actually, what we can do is that why don't we see the customers with the high balance? So balance safe here is actually the money that is saved in the bank by the customers. And in this case study, we want to reduce costs by helping the bank to find out which communication channels are actually better to reach out to the customers. That's why if we see here, we saw that actually some of the channels work, like the calls by the telesales, and then we also see other types of channels, like let's say there was an e-channel. So we also see this type of relationship back then, and we see that actually if we focus on the higher balance customers, which the customers who have more money in their savings account, we can help to reduce the cost of the communication channels.
Okay, I hope that answered the question of the balance safe. Now let's move on to the next question. This question is is good. Do House of Analytics have a preference in terms of tools using for business analytics, or you just use Excel perhaps? So Sarah, can you help us to answer this question?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. So basically, the question is asking, how can we create financial analysis? Yeah, whether are we using certain method or are we using certain platform or so on and so forth. So basically, all the financial analysis that we do, we can use this using Excel. Yeah, any kind, whether we want to create the financial analysis on investment or in business, we can use it using Excel, because the financial analysis itself is, I want to say it's basic math, because it's just multiplication, division, subtract, minus, and so on and so forth. But what's important is the concept or the formula that we use.
I see. It means that you don't need a sophisticated tool in order to perform the financial analysis. You can start small from only Excel and then produce any financial analytics. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, Sean, could you help me to answer this question? How to justify the forecast for inventory stock, because sometimes we have the wrong forecast.
Okay, so so how to justify the forecast for inventory stock? So whenever we want to forecast, especially for inventory, I understand sometimes we're so deep into trying to get the forecasting right. We're always trying to, use data that gives more accurate forecast that can predict, what's actually going to happen in the future. But actually, what I think is more important here is not necessarily how can you improve the forecast, because I mean, we can talk about that a lot on how to improve forecasts, but more about what are you using the forecast for, right? And how are you able to match, either the supply, because I know in manufacturing, you also have lead time, you also have delays from suppliers, for example, and that can also, lead to uncertainty. And at the same time, from the demand side, you also, suddenly the market goes up, down, right? But the most important thing here for forecasting, um, what you're trying to do is to plan, right? Forecasting is not trying to predict, you know, where would the world go, but it's more about, okay, if we think that things are going up or even down in the market, or suddenly there's a disruption in the supply, or for example, oil is going, is very low price, right? If we think that this is still going to continue, then what should we do about it, right? Are we going to buy more oil, or should we, we can wait it out, right? Because it's still going to be very low. And so for here, forecasting for inventory stock, I think the most important part is going back to the objective, right? Or the business objective, where if you're trying to, expand, or you're trying to take opportunity of the raw materials, like oil right now is very low, then, you want to buy as much as possible, right? Um, but then let's say for the but for the demand, you're waiting it, right? Right now with Corona, the market is all going down, right? And so being able to justify the forecast is more about, what is the decision that is going to come out of the forecast. And from that, I think is a more valuable analysis and recommendation than just giving an accurate forecast, for example. um, and I think most of the time, forecasting is for, planning, rather than just being able to predict, where is the world going to be.
Okay, I also agree with you, Sean, that in order to do a good forecast, we have to able to connect again to the objective. What is our objective for this forecast? Thank you, Sean, for answering the question. So now let's move on. I have one interesting question. Maybe Tasha could help me to answer this. What is the important consideration when we carry out data analytics for UMKM or SME? As we know that typically SME didn't have much data.
The thing that we want to be able to focus on SME is, of course, keep your in terms of the data and analytics, you can actually track them on a day-to-day basis, right? Let's say you sell SMEs who sell food and beverage. On a day-to-day basis, the things that you can track, or the behavior that you can track, is actually what kind of food and beverage does the customer like to have on the weekends, on the weekdays. And from that, actually, only just from that, we can already know what kind of food they like. And if we want to do a promo, let's say, we can also see it and play with the promos. Let's say on a weekend, we can have some kind of um, experimentation. Let's say you have a new ideas that you want to put, then you can have that. So it's about actually tracking and monitoring the behavior of the customers and the suppliers. So two sides for SMEs: track and monitor the behavior of the customers, which means if you sell food and beverage, you can track what kind of foods and beverage that the customers prefer. On the second hand, you can also track the behavior and monitor the behavior of your suppliers. You know that some of the suppliers might have the best resource. And in terms of cost, let's say you also need to consider um, the transportation that it took from the place of your supplier to your place, the cost of the production, the cost of, let's say, the transportation that it took, so that it can help you not only to save money, but also you can optimize your savings and generate more revenue. So that's for SMEs.
Okay, thank you, Tasha. So now let's move on to the next question. The question is a bit long, and maybe Sarah could help me to answer this question. How can companies analyze and determine value in investment, and especially risks that can sometimes be difficult to foresee, for example, Corona? And also, you mentioned earlier that finance in business can be applied in personal finance, but can finance in investment also be applied in personal finance?
Okay, this is a very interesting question. Thank you for Angel to tell me about this question. The first question is about how can company analyze and determine the value in investment, especially risks that can sometimes be difficult to foresee. Okay, so of course, just like in everyday's life, there are risks that is hard to see. For example, you know that it's there, but it's still hard for you to foresee whether it will happen or not. For example, if you walk through the MRT, and then usually you walk down using the stairs, but today the stairs was slippery and then you fall down. Unforeseen risks are basically like that, like Corona. We can see it somehow being vague, like we heard that China encountered the virus first, so is the Italy, and then some countries in Europe. Even though in Indonesia it's kind of late that we figure out that the virus is here, but still, within the short span of time, it's going to be hard for us to make a big decision. If companies want to analyze and determine the value in investment, it's the simplest thing that they can do is taking a look at their financial report. So if you work in consulting business, or maybe you also work in investment banking, or in maybe you're still a student who's trying to browse through companies to find your next internship place, if you go to their website, you can download, or you can see, or you can preview their company financial report. Usually the company have at least the last 5 years if they're already been there for a quite long time, to see whether the risk is great or not. If you see that the profit is constantly decreasing and the cost is constantly increasing, so there is a huge gap between the revenue and the cost, resulting in small margin of profit or resulting in minus profit, it means that the risk is higher compared to the other companies who have consistently increasing their revenue or increasing their profit. That is one of the way how companies can take a look at uh, other companies and other risks if they want to invest or in making investment. The second one is about whether we can apply the finance and investment in our personal life or in our personal finance. Of course we can. The methodology is basically the same. So if you're thinking about putting your money in banks or in your savings account, it doesn't matter what kind of bank account that you have, but if you're planning to put your money there, okay, I just want to put 10 million a month, and then in the second month I get 20, third, fourth, and fifth month, and because there would be an interest rate from the bank, I would get maybe more after 10 years. But if you look through the bank regulation, you can see that actually the interest amount in your savings account is probably just 1 to 2%, depending on the amount you put in your account. Not to mention, you also have maintenance from the bank, maintenance fee, administration fee, card fee, and so on and so forth. And instead of getting more return, or instead of getting more money, you will your savings will be cut even more rather than growing if you put it in bank. If you want to use personal finance in investment, you can use it if you want to invest or buy stocks, or you want to put your money in mutual funds. There are a lot of techniques here. We will not be going through all of them, but one thing that you can make sure is the same. If you want to invest, let's say in bank, in one of the bank that we already mentioned before, let's say the DBS, the biggest bank in the world, you want to invest in DBS Indonesia, let's say, you need to take a look at the financial report each year. It doesn't have to be that certain bank. Maybe if you want to invest in a manufacturing company or in retail business, you need to take a look at their financial report. As an investor, of course, you want a higher return. If you do see that the company doesn't have continuous return or continuous profit within the last 3 or 5 years, then you can make sure that the company is actually a risky one if you want to invest in. So the principle of applying finance in business or finance in investment is actually the same if you want to apply it when you have a company or working as an employee for company and you're assessing other company, or you want to apply in personal finance.
Okay, I see, Sarah. So if I may summary and rephrase I would say that we need to look into the financial report. So we have to use data and has to be longitudinal data in order to make the decision in finance. Yeah. Okay. So, okay, let's move on to the next question. The question from Jeremiah Silitonga. Maybe this question would be answered by Sean. So Sean, facing the insufficient data, we have to make a list of assumptions based on our experience. Are there any guidance to make assumptions that comply analytic principle?
Okay, so for whenever we make a decision, of course, we always have our own assumptions and experience. We have to take into account in that as well whenever we want to make a decision, because data, even though it's very important, because it can give you what is actually happening, what's the truth and all. Still, your experience also plays a role in making decisions in any kind of decision, whether it's life decisions or even business decision. In the context of business decisions, what I would usually do is have a list of assumptions based on experience, and with those kind of assumptions, try to prove whether your assumptions are correct or not based on data analytics. So if we go into the example that we had with the banking one, which was to correlate the KPIs with the financial outcome. In that project, our client was assuming that the more you call the customer, the more that you will be able to collect interest, right? The interest money from the customer, because the more that you do means that the likelihood that you're gonna get more out of it. It's similar to call centers, right? The more you call customers, the more that you're gonna buy. They're going to buy, right? That's the assumption, right? Now, while it may sound like a logical theory. Um, but the question is that assumption true, right? And what we usually do is we either do correlational study or we do testing, right? And we looked into the analysis where, well, let's say we found that those who call more than those who don't really call, right? Um, we found out, like, let's say they have the same revenue, right? They generate the same revenue. And if that actually comes up, then that particular assumption then has to be, thrown out of the door, right? But just because you have the assumption wrong doesn't mean, you shouldn't make assumptions as well. Because assumptions also can guide us to what kind of questions do we need to ask. And assumptions can actually help us understand what are the analysis that we need to do so that we can either prove or disprove whether our hypotheses are wrong. So assumptions and a hypothesis, they're kind of a bit the same. And in analytics, it's all about weighting hypothesis. Um, let's say, for example, in our banking case study, where the more you call, the more that you make money, right? The more that you will sell the product or even collect interest. Um, the more you call, the more the outcome, right? But when we found out about it, it's not necessarily true. And when we did the correlational study, as well as we looked into the performance of those who actually don't call, the assumption was just flat out wrong. But at least we actually made that assumption and hypothesis, because if we didn't, right, then we wouldn't have found out about it. So having those assumptions are actually very useful in trying to find out what is actually causing the problem, and how can you actually better measure success in a company, and how can you actually know what is actually creating, what is actually impacting your financial bottom line. Um, because we always have those assumptions where, okay, the more you grow as a company, the better, the higher the asset or something like that, right? But it may not actually be true. So whenever you have assumptions, always keep in mind that, you know go back to the data and, is it actually wrong or not, right? But it's okay to have assumptions as well. And I think that's the important part of it is, whenever you're wrong, at least you're wrong. And that's very important in my opinion.
Oh, okay. So it's like a mix of experience and you validate it with the analytical tool, yeah, Sean.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, now let's move on to the next question. Um, this question is coming from Joshua Ratadi. Tasha, how to deal with the historical data that do not have pattern due to the up and down of business?
Thank you for the question, how to deal with the historical data that do not have a pattern due to the up and down of the business. So I'm just assuming that perhaps this is maybe related to current situation with Corona, and perhaps it's also maybe related to, let's say, because of the seasonality of the product. Some services or product might be sold in certain months. They can work in certain months because it's seasonal. And the way that, if we cannot take the historical data, then the thing that we can do in order to, let's say, solve the problem is that we can trace the process in terms of the behavior of the people. Let's say we do surveys. We also, the ones that we have done in some of our case studies was that we did workshops with the internal people, and we get their feedbacks. It's not because there are no patterns, actually. It's because we haven't found a way to frame the problem correctly most of the time. And I think Sean and Sarah can also share some of their experiences, because some clients say, hey, how come I can't find an insight from this problem? It's not because it doesn't have a pattern, but it's because we haven't framed the problem correctly. So the thing that we need to do, the first thing that we need to do is, of course, to trace the process back. We should do interviews. We should do also surveys from the people to understand what kind of problem is actually happening in the ground. And from that, we can have an idea of what to do next, actually. From our previous sessions, we learned about design thinking. If some of you have attended our session previously, we talked about design thinking, and I believe design thinking can help you in understanding and framing the problem, because we are trying to empathize with the surroundings that we encountered, and we are trying to see, make some hypothesis on what is happening actually. When we see in the ground that there is no pattern due to the ups and downs of the business, then the things that we should be asking would be, what causes it? Is it because of our offer that is not actually not that good, not that quite good? Is it because of leadership? Is it, if it's related to Corona, then it should be normal, right? Because of course, in Corona, in these times, business are up and downs, of course, right? So the context is important. So it's not, for me personally, it's not because of the historical data do not have pattern. It's just that perhaps the problem needs to be defined correctly. What do you think, Sean and Sarah?
I think that's true, yeah, because we have one of the project that we did about the financial analytics is that so this company is one of the biggest distribution company in Indonesia in terms of electronic, and they want to see how does the business going, because every year their profit, so every year they don't have any profit. So basically they have minus and they have to cover up for the mess and so on and so forth. But every year their sales is increasing. So let's say for 2015, their sales is 1 billion. The next year is 2 billion. The next year is 3 billion. But their profit keeps decreasing until the last 3 years. Their profit is basically minus. So they don't get any profit. They keep taking uploads. They're not really sure what happens. And when we take a look at their financial report and we do the financial analysis, we use the data that we have, which is only the past 3 years, even though they've been feeling some problems since 5 to 7 years ago. And then at first we thought that it was a sales problem. But then after taking a look at their sales data, sales record of their retail partner across Indonesia, we figure out that the sales is actually increasing, and it's really, really, the margin is really, really high. The difference between this year and next year's sales is really, really high. But what we found out is the reason why they don't have any profit, or the business are not giving any profit, are not giving a lot of revenue, is because the method of the sales payment. So they sell electronics to their retail company, and because they feel that, oh, the retail company, the retail businesses have been working for us, have been working with us for like 10 years, 15 years. So, they can just take up our electronic and put it in their store. And then they will pay us after the goods is sold. But anyway, because it's electronics, it cannot be in the store that long. So after 1 year or 2 years not being sold, then the goods will, you have to sell it on discount because there is newer model, because it's not working properly anymore, and so on and so forth. So it's not really about we don't have enough data or we don't have longer data, like maybe do we need to take a look at their last 10 years or 5 years? No, it's not really about that. It's about framing the problems correctly in order to provide solutions correctly and solve the problem.
Yeah. So to that question as well, I think here we also have to be very creative with the data that we have, right? Knowing that uh, in some businesses that we've actually worked with, in SMEs and a lot of NGOs as well, they don't have data that have crazy patterns and that we know that okay, this is going to happen kind of thing, right? But what we can do at least is try to work what we have, right? And sometimes it takes a lot of creativity to see the data, meaning that instead of actually looking for a trend or a pattern, why don't we try to understand, okay, it's going down, it's the market is going down, or the business is going well. What is actually causing it, right? And we can usually segment it, being able to dig down on what does the data even mean. And um, it, it's kind of hard to explain as well because it's also an art in this, where just don't see financial data as financial data, meaning that when you have a data that shows customer, then you only use it for customer reasons. If you have a financial data, then you only use it for financial decisions. And then if you have operational data, then you only use it for operational reasons. I think what we can do here, especially for analytics, is that don't just stick with the traditional thinking that you need this particular data to make this decision, but actually we can do a lot of things with the data that we have. It's just that the difficult part is how are we able to analyze and even convert this into something that we can make decisions out of. And that's, I think, the most difficult part of them all, because it requires experience, that is one, but it requires really out of the box thinking and a lot of experimentation in order to find at least a pattern. um, and it's actually requiring and actually testing your creativity as well in this particular sense.
Okay, I hope that answered the question that, yeah, the analytics is the mix of art and science, so that you need to be creative as well as to understand what is the context and the problems that you have. I think right now we are in the top of hours, so I will hand you to Tasha again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Angel, for the Q&A session. So we are nearing the end of our session today. We would like to thank you very much for your participation, and for those of you who still have questions here, don't worry. Just like our previous session in design thinking, we are going to answer all of your questions and send it through emails so that everyone can learn and can see what are the questions and also our answers for your learning. And also, we would like to also make sure that after the session, we will give you all of the recordings and also the material for today. So please make sure that you have a valid email address so that we can send you through all the materials. If you have any questions to us, contact us for your questions or inquiries through our emails here. And if you want to know more on our next sessions or also our events, please follow our Instagram here, House of Analytics. We would like to thank you very much for your participation and for your questions. You guys have very, very good questions. Don't worry, we will answer your questions through email. So make sure that you have a valid email address so that we can send you all of the answers. So thank you very much, guys. On behalf of House of Analytics, please stay tuned because we will have recurring session every Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Jakarta time. And we will cover a range of different topics every week related to analytics. From the first session, we talked about more on banking, people analytics, and we also talked about design thinking last week. And for today, we are talking about financial analytics. So please stay tuned. Follow our Instagram if you guys want to see more on what are our activities. Thank you very much. Good night, guys. Have a really good night.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys.
See you next week.
See you next